Have you ever noticed that the same painful pattern keeps repeating? Different person, same emotional distance, same disappearing act, same hollow feeling. This isn't bad luck or coincidence. There's a hidden psychological mechanism at work, and understanding it could completely change relationship outcomes. This is about why you keep attracting avoidant partners and what to do now. By the end, the psychology behind this pattern will make perfect sense, and more importantly, the exact steps to break the cycle will be clear. Here's what makes this pattern so maddeningly persistent. It feels like avoidant people just keep appearing, as if the universe is conspiring to deliver emotionally unavailable partners on repeat. But something far more interesting is happening beneath the surface. The attraction isn't random. It's operating according to precise psychological rules that most people never consciously recognize. And once those rules become visible, everything changes. Think about how a magnet works. Opposite poles attract with an almost irresistible force. Now imagine that same principle applied to attachment styles, the psychological blueprints that govern how people connect in relationships. Anxious attachment and avoidant attachment are essentially opposite poles. Anxious individuals crave closeness, reassurance, and emotional intimacy. Avoidant individuals value independence, space, and emotional distance. On paper, these seem incompatible, yet they find each other with remarkable consistency. Why? The answer lies in something called unconscious pattern recognition. The human brain is an extraordinary pattern-matching machine, constantly scanning the environment for familiar signals. And here's the twist. Familiarity doesn't mean healthy, it just means recognizable. When someone grows up with inconsistent caregiving, emotional unavailability, or unpredictable love, the nervous system learns to associate those patterns with home. Not home as in safe and nurturing, home as in known and familiar. The brain interprets familiar as correct, even when familiar is painful. This is the foundation of the entire cycle. So, when an anxious person meets an avoidant person, something subtle happens. The avoidant person's emotional distance, their hot and cold behavior, their need for space, all of this triggers recognition in the anxious person's nervous system. It whispers, "This feels like something important. Pay attention to this person." But that recognition isn't attraction to health. It's attraction to a familiar wound. The brain is essentially saying, this person recreates the emotional landscape from childhood. Maybe this time things can be different. Maybe this time enough effort will earn consistent love. And that's the trap. The avoidant person, meanwhile, is running their own unconscious program. They often grew up learning that emotional needs were burdensome, that vulnerability led to rejection or engulfment, that safety meant maintaining distance. When they meet an anxious person whose warmth and emotional availability initially feel appealing, something eventually shifts. As the relationship deepens and the anxious person begins seeking more closeness, the avoidant person's nervous system sounds an alarm. Intimacy starts feeling like danger. The response? Withdrawal, creating distance, becoming less available, which of course terrifies the anxious partner and triggers more pursuit. And round it goes. But here's where things get truly fascinating. This isn't just about two people with incompatible styles accidentally meeting. There's an actual selection process happening, usually outside conscious awareness. Think about the very beginning of dating, when an anxious person meets someone secure, someone emotionally available, consistent, communicative. Something unexpected often occurs. It feels boring. There's a distinct lack of intensity, a missing spark. The secure person returns texts promptly, makes clear plans, expresses interest directly, and somehow this registers as not exciting or too easy or even not really that into me. Meanwhile, when that same anxious person meets someone avoidant, someone who's inconsistent, mysterious, hard to read, the nervous system lights up. The ambiguity creates obsessive thinking. The hot and cold behavior generates emotional highs and lows. The difficulty of earning their attention feels like a challenge worth conquering. This intensity gets misinterpreted as chemistry, as passion, as this must be special because the feelings are so strong. What's actually happening is that unpredictability activates the brain's reward system in a very particular way. Intermittent reinforcement, sometimes getting what's desired, sometimes not, is one of the most powerful conditioning mechanisms in psychology. It's the same principle that makes slot machines so addictive. When a partner is consistently available, the reward is predictable. The brain adapts and stops creating as much dopamine around interactions. But when a partner is inconsistent, sometimes warm, sometimes distant, the brain never adapts. It stays in a state of heightened anticipation, constantly seeking the next win. This neurochemical cocktail feels exactly like falling in love, but it's closer to addiction than actual compatibility. Now here's something most people miss entirely. The pattern doesn't just involve being attracted to avoidant people. It also involves unconsciously filtering out or dismissing secure people before anything even begins. Secure individuals often get friend-zoned, passed over, or labeled as nice, but not for me. This happens so automatically that most people don't realize they're doing it. The nervous system is scanning for the familiar wound, and secure people don't activate that recognition. They feel wrong precisely because they're right. Their emotional availability doesn't match the internal template of what love is supposed to feel like. So, even when secure, healthy partners are available, they remain invisible or uninteresting. The filtering system only allows through people who recreate familiar pain. This is why the pattern persists across years and multiple relationships. It's not about bad luck. It's about an unconscious selection bias. There's also a more subtle dynamic involving self-worth. Many anxious individuals carry a deep, often hidden belief that they're too much, too needy, too emotional, too demanding. Avoidant partners confirm this belief by withdrawing when needs are expressed, implicitly communicating that those needs are indeed too much. This creates a painful feedback loop. The anxious person learns to shrink their needs, to apologize for having feelings, to work harder to earn love. Meanwhile, the avoidant person feels increasingly pressured and withdraws further. The anxious person's worst fear, being too much and causing someone to leave, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. But instead of recognizing the dynamic as incompatibility, the anxious person often internalizes it as confirmation that something is fundamentally wrong with them. This shame makes it even harder to recognize the pattern and choose differently next time. Another layer involves what happens in the relationship itself. When an anxious-avoidant pairing continues, both people's nervous systems become increasingly dysregulated. The anxious partner becomes more hypervigilant, constantly scanning for signs of abandonment. Every delayed text, every request for space, every moment of distraction gets interpreted as rejection. The anxiety escalates. Meanwhile, the avoidant partner becomes more defensive, feeling perpetually criticized and smothered. They withdraw more, sometimes stonewalling or creating emotional walls. Both people are essentially activating each other's core wounds on repeat. The anxious person's fear of abandonment and the avoidant person's fear of engulfment play out in an exhausting dance. And here's the cruel irony. The more the anxious person pursues, the more the avoidant person retreats. The more the avoidant person retreats, the more the anxious person pursues. Each person's coping strategy makes the other person's fear worse. So why does this keep happening if it's so painful? Because on some level, it's serving a hidden psychological function. For the anxious person, the struggle to earn love from an unavailable partner can feel like a chance to finally fix the original wound. If only this person can be convinced to stay, to be consistent, to choose closeness, then maybe the childhood experience of inconsistent love can be retroactively healed. It's an unconscious attempt at mastery. The brain is trying to rewrite history by finding someone similar to the original unavailable caregiver and getting a different outcome. But relationships don't work that way. An adult partner cannot heal childhood wounds. Those require different kinds of work: therapy, self-awareness, reparenting practices. Expecting a romantic relationship to fix attachment trauma is like trying to use a hammer to repair a computer. Wrong tool, wrong job. For the avoidant person, the dynamic serves a different function. By choosing partners who want more closeness than they're comfortable giving, avoidant individuals get to maintain their defensive walls while blaming the partner's neediness for the distance. It's a way to avoid confronting their own discomfort with intimacy. The anxious partner becomes the reason for the distance, which lets the avoidant person avoid examining their deeper fear of vulnerability. Both people then are unconsciously using the relationship to avoid facing their core wounds. The relationship becomes a distraction from healing rather than a context for it. Breaking this pattern requires something that sounds simple but feels incredibly difficult: interrupting the unconscious recognition system. This means learning to identify when that familiar pull is happening and questioning it rather than following it blindly. When meeting someone new and feeling that intense, obsessive attraction, the kind that makes it hard to think about anything else, that's often a red flag, not a green light. Real compatibility tends to feel calmer, more stable, more comfortable. It doesn't generate the same addictive highs and lows because there's consistency instead of unpredictability. But to an anxious nervous system trained on inconsistency, that calm feels wrong. So the first step is retraining the recognition system to value safety over intensity, consistency over drama, clarity over mystery. This retraining involves a concept called earned secure attachment. Attachment styles aren't permanent personality traits. They're adaptive strategies that can change with new experiences and intentional work. Earned security means becoming aware of attachment patterns, understanding where they came from, and consciously developing new ways of relating. It means learning to self-soothe instead of seeking constant external reassurance. It means building the capacity to tolerate discomfort and uncertainty without immediately seeking relief through a partner. It means recognizing that intense chemistry might be a warning sign rather than validation. And crucially, it means learning to recognize and value secure behavior in potential partners, even when it feels unfamiliar or boring at first. Practically, this looks like several concrete changes. First, slowing down the early stages of dating. When that intense pull happens, instead of diving in, pause. Notice the intensity. Ask, what about this person feels familiar? What childhood dynamic is being recreated? This doesn't mean rejecting everyone who creates any excitement, but it does mean adding conscious awareness to the process. Second, actively seeking out and giving chances to people who demonstrate secure qualities: clear communication, consistent behavior, emotional availability, comfort with both intimacy and independence. Even if these people don't initially spark intense feelings, spending time with them allows the nervous system to experience what secure attachment actually feels like. Over time, this can retrain the attraction system. Third, working on self-worth independently of relationships. Building a life that feels full and meaningful without a partner reduces the desperation that makes avoidant people seem so compelling. When someone already feels whole, the breadcrumbs of attention from an avoidant person stop being enough. There's also value in understanding what secure people actually look like. because they often get overlooked. Secure people respond to texts in reasonable timeframes without playing games. They're direct about their interest instead of being mysterious. They handle conflict by talking things through instead of withdrawing or exploding. They're comfortable with both closeness and independence. They enjoy time together without being clingy and time apart without disappearing. They respect boundaries and communicate their own clearly. They don't create drama or chaos. Their consistency can initially feel anticlimactic to someone used to emotional roller coasters. But that consistency is exactly what allows relationships to actually be enjoyable instead of exhausting. Learning to recognize and value these qualities requires shifting the entire framework of what attraction means. Another piece involves examining the stories being told about relationships. Many people who keep attracting avoidant partners have internalized narratives like, "Love is hard work," "The best things are worth fighting for," or "Anything worth having requires struggle." While there's some truth to the idea that relationships require effort, these narratives can justify staying in fundamentally incompatible dynamics. Healthy relationships do require work, communication skills, conflict resolution, compromise, but they shouldn't require constant struggle just to get basic needs met. They shouldn't involve begging for attention, decoding mixed signals, or convincing someone to want closeness. When the entire relationship feels like an uphill battle, that's usually not about two people working through challenges. That's about fundamental incompatibility, changing the narrative from "love is struggle" to "love should feel mostly good, with occasional challenges we face together," helps break the pattern. There's also the question of timing. Many people feel ready to break the pattern intellectually. They understand the dynamics, they can articulate what's happening, but emotionally, they're still drawn to avoidant partners. This gap is normal. Intellectual understanding comes first, but emotional rewiring takes longer. It happens through repeated experiences of choosing differently, even when it feels uncomfortable. Each time someone consciously chooses the secure person over the exciting but unavailable person, the nervous system gets new data. Each time someone stays single instead of jumping into another familiar dynamic, space opens for healing. Each time someone practices self-soothing instead of seeking external validation, internal security grows. This isn't instant. It's a gradual process of building new neural pathways through repeated practice. So here's what all of this means for anyone trapped in this cycle right now. First, recognize the pattern without shame. Attraction to avoidant partners isn't a character flaw. It's an understandable response to early experiences and conditioning. The nervous system is doing what it was trained to do, seeking familiar patterns and trying to finally get a different outcome. Understanding this creates compassion instead of self-judgment. Second, start questioning intense attractions. When that pull happens, get curious. What about this person feels familiar? What old wound is being activated? This doesn't mean rejecting the person automatically, but it does mean moving slowly and gathering more information before diving in emotionally. Third, actively practice noticing and appreciating secure qualities in people, even when they don't create immediate fireworks. Give secure people multiple chances. Spend time with them, even if the initial spark is missing. Often, genuine compatibility builds over time rather than exploding instantly. Fourth, work on building internal security through therapy, attachment-focused practices, and building a life that feels fulfilling independently of romance. The more secure someone becomes within themselves, the less compelling avoidant partners appear. Fifth, set clear standards for how partners should treat people in relationships. Consistent communication, emotional availability, respect for needs, willingness to work through conflict. These should be minimum requirements, not aspirational bonuses. When someone fails to meet these standards, recognize it as incompatibility rather than a challenge to overcome. Sixth, practice tolerating the discomfort of secure relationships. When things feel calm and stable, instead of interpreting that as boring or wrong, try reframing it as safe and healthy. The nervous system needs time to learn that safety can coexist with connection. Seventh, examine broader life patterns. Often, the tendency to pursue unavailable people shows up in other areas too. Friendships with people who are unreliable, jobs that don't value contributions, hobbies that feel more frustrating than enjoyable. Looking at the bigger pattern helps illuminate the core belief system driving choices across contexts. And finally, be patient with the process. Changing attachment patterns takes time. There will likely be slip-ups, moments of falling back into old patterns, relationships that look different but end up being the same dynamic in disguise. That's all part of the learning process. Each iteration provides more information and gradually builds the capacity to choose differently. The emotional truth beneath all of this is both sobering and hopeful. The pattern of attracting avoidant partners isn't happening to anyone. It's happening through choices, unconscious choices, but choices nonetheless, which means it can change. The nervous system that learned to seek familiar pain can learn to seek genuine safety. The attraction system that lights up for unavailability can be retrained to light up for consistency. The internal template of what love feels like can be rewritten. None of this is easy. It requires facing uncomfortable truths about childhood, grieving what didn't happen back then, and building new capacities that don't exist yet. But it's possible. People do this successfully all the time. They break the pattern, find secure partners, and build relationships that feel fundamentally different. Relationships that add to life instead of dominating it. Relationships that feel good most of the time instead of being constant work. Relationships where love is expressed through consistent care instead of intermittent attention. This isn't about finding perfect people or perfect relationships. It's about recognizing that the pattern of attraction to avoidant partners is learned, which means it can be unlearned. It's about understanding that the intensity of anxious avoidant dynamics isn't passion. It's nervous system activation mistaken for love. It's about believing that secure, stable relationships are possible and learning to recognize them when they appear. And it's about doing the internal work that makes those relationships feel appealing instead of boring. The cycle breaks when the nervous system finally gets the message that safety is more valuable than familiarity, that consistency is more attractive than intensity, and that genuine compatibility feels different than the addictive pull of recreating childhood wounds. That message doesn't arrive through intellectual understanding alone. It arrives through experience, through repeatedly choosing differently until the new choice becomes natural, through building relationships where needs are met instead of dismissed, through discovering that secure attachment isn't the absence of passion, but the foundation for sustainable, genuine connection. The pattern that brought someone here can be transformed into wisdom that guides them forward, and that transformation, difficult as it is, might be the most worthwhile work any person ever does.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to better understand avoidance, relationships, and psychological biases, then subscribe to our channel, because you deserve beautiful relationships.